first want to just share this story with you of something that happened to me. On Monday, I was sitting in my jacuzzi where I live, and it's a public jacuzzi. You might call it hot tub or whatever. I'm sitting in there as I'm reading this book and I'm relaxing. I notice something fly by my face. I'm like, whoa! And it lands in the water, and I look down and there's a honeybee. It just flew into the water, and now it's gonna drown. I have my book in my left hand, so I take my right hand and I put it underwater. You know, I save bees all the time. I usually take both hands and I just whoosh, let the bee out of the water, and then it crawls away and then eventually flies away. Well, this time I took my one hand and I threw it out of the water, and I noticed that it kind of stuck to one of my fingers for a second. And I just kind of, and it flew off. When it flew off, it of my hand, it landed in a little puddle of water. So I kind of took my finger and scooted the bee along, like, here, come to a dry spot. And then I kind of noticed something. I look at my finger because I felt some pain in my finger, and I look and I'm like, oh, the bee stung me. When I cupped it in my hand, I guess its stinger had come out and it stung me. And I'm like, oh no. So I have a stinger in my finger. So I pulled the stinger out and I flashed back to a time years ago when I had accidentally stepped on a bee when I was at a swimming pool, and something told me to put my foot in hot water, because I remember when I got stung by a stingray years ago, the first thing they said to do was put your foot in hot water. So I remember doing that, and the pain from the stingray finally went away after probably 10 minutes or so. So when I stepped on a bee years ago, I did the same thing. I put my foot in hot water, and it took like 5 minutes and there was no more pain. So now this bee stung me. So I put the book down, I put my right hand in the hot water, and now I'm talking to the bee. I'm like, oh no, little buddy, you stung me and now you're gonna die, because you know, bees die when they sting you. I think what happens is their intestines come out with their stinger, right? But there was something I noticed about this stinger, that when it was on my finger, the bee's intestines weren't attached to it. And when I was looking at the little bee, you could tell its intestines were about to have come out. I'm sorry if this sounds gross to you guys, but this is just what happened. You could tell its intestines were kind of like about to come out, but they didn't. And I start talking to the bee, and I touch it on its head, and I said, you're gonna be okay, little buddy. I'm gonna stay here with you the whole time. And I said, you shall live, you shall not die. You shall live, you shall not die. You will live. And I said, live, little bee. And then I started praying for the bee, and I was praying in my spirit language. And as I'm praying in the spirit for the bee, I hear the gate open, and there was a couple that was coming into the jacuzzi, and so they came to sit down, and I had never met them before, but we start talking, and I said, this little bee just stung me in the finger right here. And the woman says, oh no. I'm like, I know, but he's hanging in there, look it. And I said, I actually was praying for the bee. And we ended up having a pretty interesting conversation, because they came from a Mormon background. They were Mormons before. I'm like, oh yeah, I used to be a Jehovah's Witness. So we had a good conversation, but I was paying attention to the bee, you know, because I promised the bee I wouldn't leave it. And I kept wanting to let the bee know that I was there for it. You know, we're doing this together. And do you know what happened? That bee eventually does zzz and flew away. it lived. Now, I never heard of a bee stinging anybody and living after that. I thought they always died. So whether it was because just the stinger part came out and got me, but its intestines didn't come with that, or the power of prayer, doesn't matter. It was just a really amazing experience, and I wanted to share that with you quick.